Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite Nikhil Pandit, Global Marketing Director, Jordan Brand, Membership and Gaming, Nike, for a closing keynote on 5 growth unlocks to building unbreakable consumer relations in a fragmented media landscape.
Greatness, it's just something we made up. Somehow we've come to believe that greatness is a gift reserved for a chosen few, for prodigies, for superstars, and the rest of us can only stand by watching. You can forget that. Greatness is not some rare DNA strand. It's not some precious thing. Greatness is no more unique to us than breathing. We're all capable of it. All of us.
Well, hopefully you all felt that. And no matter how many times I see it, that spot gives me the chills every single time. And that just goes to show that as a brand, if you can give people something to really believe in, something that's bigger than a product or a service, a message that is timeless and can help consumers really connect with your core values, see your soul almost, that can go a long way in building those deeper, long-lasting relationships. And I am fortunate enough to work with some of the best storytellers to ever do it. And this was just an appetizer. This is going to be a fun discussion. Today, we're going to talk about 5 growth unlocks, according to me, just my humble opinion based on my personal learnings, that can help brands to build those unbreakable consumer relationships in a fragmented, cluttered, and an ever-evolving media landscape. And I want to emphasize that these are not hacks, because most people try to use growth hacks, because as they say, nothing worth having comes easy. So as a brand, you have to be committed to these in the long run to truly see sustained value. On that note, a little bit about me. My name is Nikhil Pandit. I was born in Srinagar, Kashmir. I grew up in Delhi, and I currently work out of the Nike World Headquarters in Portland, Oregon, as the Global Director of Member Marketing and Gaming Partnerships for Jordan Brand. And my job, in essence, is to unlock something that is quite simple yet profound, which is how do we as a brand serve the needs of our consumers more personally than ever before? How can we serve our loyal consumers with what they want, when they want it, recognize them and celebrate them? And for those on the outside looking in, how can we break down those barriers to entry? So we can go from sporadic and broken interactions to unlocking that deep engagement and unique value that hopefully results in those long-term mutually beneficial relationships. And while the ethos of this approach has remained consistent in my 13 odd years of being a global marketer across India, Singapore, and now the US, the landscape that we operate in as marketers and the tools and the capabilities that we have at our disposal have truly transformed and will continue to do so over the years. And from my early days in Bacardi, India, as a clueless rookie fresh out of B school, to my 9-year journey at Nike, having had the privilege of working with some of the best marketing minds across the world, I've picked up some useful learnings along the way, which I hope to pass along through this presentation. And if I'm being completely honest, each of these 5 unlocks could be a separate topic on their own, but I've tried my best to condense them down for you. What I've also tried to do is mix in some of the best-in-class executions, not just from Nike, because I don't want it to be too one-dimensional, but also from some of my industry peers, just to bring in a little bit more flavor. So with all that said, let's dive right in. So this one's really interesting. Back in 2011, I still remember when I was taking my baby steps as a marketer in India. It was such a different time for brands and consumers alike. All my millennial friends would recall that smartphone penetration was still in its infancy. Orkut and Yahoo were still a thing, and e-commerce was looked at with suspicion, almost considered a fad. And we all know how times have changed since then. So let's kick this conversation off with perhaps the most important unlock of all, which is to always be your authentic self as a brand. And in order to do that, you need to first make sure you know who you are truly as a brand. What is that core DNA, that long-term vision and mission that guides every action that you take? No matter if you're a B2C brand or B2B brand, if you're a product brand, if you're a service brand, you exist online or offline, the most powerful and successful brands in the world have that strong clarity of purpose and a reason for being. Nike, for example, and it's an example close to home, exists to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. Ever since my time working on the brand, from my early days to right now, every work that the brand actually, every strategy that the team works on, that is the unofficial filter for every single piece of work that the team works on. In fact, I came across this great analogy recently, which says that as a brand, you can either be a 60-watt bulb that lights up a room, or you can be a 1-watt laser that can reach the moon. You just need to figure out and be really sure of which one is it that you're actually that you are. As they say, if you try to be everything for everyone, you accomplish being nothing to anyone. And if you have that clarity as a brand, only then will you know how to stay authentic and consistent as the world around you continues to change at a rapid pace. So if the teams are working on fast evolving spaces like social media, with the growth of new platforms like TikTok or Telegram or Discord, to gaming platforms, having that grounding of who you are and what you believe in is truly critical. I'm going to give you some of my best examples and some of the best industry practices that are out there. And honestly, I could have filled up this whole page with just Nike iconic campaigns from Nike. But the one, however, that I did choose is really close to my heart. And that is the 2016 Nike India campaign, Dada Ding, which I was fortunate enough to be a part of. And hopefully some of you who are watching this can recognize as well. That campaign is special for me because it truly pushed against a lot of convention at the time. From featuring community members of our grassroots communities like Nike Run Club and Nike Training Club as key protagonists, to a campaign that was completely women's led, because at that point in time, women continue to face the biggest societal barriers to sport. To even the way that the sport was created, which was in the form of a music video, to cut through that traditional media norm, really showcasing that sport doesn't always have to be serious and hyper competitive. And that's why, even though this campaign was led by her, eventually we saw a great deal of support and resonance come not just from women, but also men who stood up in support. And in fact, I think this got so much love from global communities, even outside of India. Just goes to show that if you have a powerful idea that's truly rooted in a strong sense of belief as a brand, it can truly cross multiple sort of markets and consumers. And then some of the other examples that I've come to learn more about and respect in my recent times working in the US are brands like Ben & Jerry's or Patagonia, who I have a lot of admiration for because their belief system, so if it's Patagonia and their belief in sustainability and doing good for the planet, or if it's Ben & Jerry's and their belief system that is enmeshed in social activism for underserved community. However those brands show up across different touch points, that belief system is always enmeshed in their advertising and their media presence, from their stores to their product packaging, and how you show up as a brand consistently definitely resonates with consumers as well. And just to throw in a more contemporary example, I thought this was a really interesting one out there. So for those of you who are familiar, would know that getting an ad space during Super Bowl in the US is perhaps the hardest thing to do, and perhaps the most expensive ad spots that you can buy. And then Coinbase did this really disruptive thing wherein for a whole 60 seconds, all their ad space was filled with was this floating sort of QR code on a TV screen. There was no music, nothing else. And then what that did was, even though it was so different from everything else, and you've got these other brands spending millions of dollars, getting some of the biggest name celebrities, it was truly disruptive because it broke through the clutter. And not only were they able to directly connect with their core audience who essentially knew what to do with the QR code floating on a TV screen, but also break the clutter and make even people who are not specifically into crypto take notice of what that platform was. And what they also did was that the QR code directly took you to the app download screen. So a lot of times when you think of like top of the funnel or bottom of the funnel media placements, like there are ways to disrupt those conventional notions if you truly do it right. And I think, again, going back to being your authentic self as a brand, I think Coinbase was true to its core DNA as a brand and what it represents. So I think you can go across the industry, but still find unlocks in terms of brands really doing this well. This is the second one. So hopefully now that we've established how important it is to be your authentic self as a brand, let's talk about how you can bring that authentic self to life across different platforms and channels. I think the best way to do that is by establishing a larger ecosystem strategy that can then inform smaller micro channel strategy. It might sound pretty heavy, but it's quite simple. Let me try and unpack that a little bit for you. That ecosystem strategy that I talked about should first and foremost involve a capability mapping exercise, which helps you decide which platforms and capabilities are most relevant for you given your target audience and your objective in the marketplace. Where you can lean on existing third-party platforms. So for example, where an IG influencer is helpful, or where you want to invest in developing capabilities internally. So, a supply chain efficiency or a shopping experience that is unique to your brand, where you want to develop those capabilities internally. Just because TikTok is cool or NFTs are in doesn't mean that you have to chase after a presence on those platforms if your target audience is not there to begin with. So I think that capability mapping exercise of understanding where you can leverage third-party platforms versus where you want to invest in internal capabilities is a good first step. The second one is essentially respecting the nuance of each platform. And I think most brands kind of rush into this by trying to repurpose what they create for one platform with another platform. So I think that is a pretty good thing to think of as you build these multi-platform strategy. A common mistake brands make is hey, I've created some content for IG, can I repurpose it for TikTok? Or even IG stories and IG feed, in fact. Like there's a lot of difference and nuance built into each of these platforms and how the content is brought to life and also consumed by the consumers. So you do want to define the role of each of these platforms clearly so they can work in unison and in service of a larger goal. And then lastly, and most importantly, there has to be an agile operating system internally that ensures seamless integration across these different teams who are working on different channel or platform strategy. Because not only do you want to avoid duplication of messaging and competing experiences, but you want there to be this cohesion or synergy across different platform teams. And a lot will be revealed as I walk through the next example, which I think in this case, I went close to home. So this is a complete Nike example. So let's start off with what the ecosystem strategy is. So let's assume Nike wants to make sport a daily habit for consumers across the globe. So the first thing, like I said, is an overall mapping of capabilities that exist. So if you think about it, there's a lot of existing channels where Nike already has a presence, whether it's their own social channels like IG, TikTok, Snap. I haven't mentioned a couple of others in there, but it's also through your community partners. So whether it's LeBron James or it's a catalyst or an influencer in the community, you've got their community channels as well. To create and disseminate some of that content, but you've also got media partnerships across the globe, working with some of the strategic partners to bring in some of those stories to life. But these are just one half of the story. On the other side, you've got these completely different platforms that are more direct channels for Nike. So if you think of commerce, you've got Nike app, you've got sneakers app, you've also got Nike.com, but also activity apps. And then going back to the capability mapping exercise that I was talking about, we realized that a big part of engaging and connecting with the community directly was to have our own activity app. So Nike Run Club NRC is our running app, and Nike Training Club is our training app internally. So if you think about it, it's this really complex ecosystem where you've got content, experiences, product showing up at different points in time across different touch points of the consumer. That's why I think it's really, really important to understand the nuance of what lives on a TikTok and Snapchat and why is that different versus what lives on your own platforms and how those can actually create a synergy in the marketplace versus competing with one another. And again, the role of some of these indirect channels and how they complement and bring people into your direct channels is another thing to kind of think through. So I think having that understanding of how these different teams work collectively for a greater cause of making sport a daily habit. So if you saw, for example, you saw an IG post of an athlete talking about his morning workout and why it energizes him. Suddenly somebody who's following that athlete gets a similar message from his friend talking about his own workout. And then they talk about how it's so convenient to have this new training program that they can both subscribe to on the Nike Training Club, which then gives them recommendations for the best workout gear, whether it's footwear or apparel that's available on the Nike app. Those are the kind of journeys and seamless experiences that you can truly unlock if you have this whole strategy sort of working in unison. Okay, so this is a good one. Hopefully you're all with me so far. We've covered a couple of really good unlocks so far. We've established how important it is to start with an ecosystem strategy that can then inform micro-channel strategies. The next one in my mind is, how do you build seamless journeys across platforms? And it might sound intuitive, but it is way more complicated in practice. A consumer in any given day engages with your brand across several touch points, from a promotional email that they might get in their inbox, to a commercial that they might see on TV, to an influencer post, like I just mentioned, that they might see on social media. It is important for relevant teams within your brand to be able to orchestrate how these different experiences work together in unison. And I think the first step in that direction is to build those capabilities that enable seamless flow of traffic from different channels, mainly from your indirect channels of presence to your direct channels of presence. So like I said, going back to the example, think of an influencer on his IG live session styling your latest apparel from your spring collection. That is immediately followed by a shoppable link that takes you to a microsite shop and shop to complete the transaction super seamlessly. or the ability to buy product online but take delivery at your neighborhood store. So some of those omni-channel connections and those O2O journeys that we can build will truly unlock the value for consumers and make it super convenient for them to be able to access the most coveted parts of your benefits as per their convenience. And like I said, as marketers, while building our plans, we should be thinking of maximizing some of those cross-channel capabilities. The second one, which I think is also super important and well documented, is how do we remove friction across your value chain? That comes from understanding where the bulk of consumers are dropping off along the way. And how can you address that internally? How can you intervene at the right time to make sure that that engagement or the lack thereof can be prevented, and you can continue to keep that seamless motion of consumers moving through your value chain. Having robust data systems that can track consumer movement across platforms is a big part of it. But I think more important than that is having the right teams in place to action some of those relevant solves, which I think is even more critical. And lastly, I think this point has been spoken about at length through anyone that you would speak to who's part of any sort of like loyalty program, where they will tell you how important it is to focus on existing member retention versus new member acquisition. Like if you think of cost, like again, different metrics and different numbers get thrown around, but on an average, it takes almost 5x more spend to acquire new consumers than to retain existing members. Not only that, I feel like beyond just the spend, often brands don't even look at the quality of acquisition versus just the quantity. For example, if you're enticing a lot of first-time buyers with promos and price off, it is invariable that they will churn or they will wait for the next promotional moment to come from your brand. So I think it's not only important to think of the quantity of new members that you acquire, but also the quality of who you're acquiring and how you're acquiring them. And then lastly, on this one, I also want to call out the fact that just the strategies and the capabilities that you want to create internally in terms of serving those who've been with your brand for a while versus the new members that you're trying to acquire has to be very, very different and has to cater to those needs as they go through your ecosystem overall. So to have that nuance built in is also equally important. A couple of examples that I really like when it comes to this third part of seamless journeys is the Starbucks Rewards program, which I think is one of the most reputed loyalty programs in the business overall. And I think a testament to its success is that it contributes almost 50% of Starbucks's overall revenue, which is an incredible statistic. I think a big part of their success is because they continue to find ways to align their business goals to their program. Without sacrificing the consumer needs. And if you can make those two work in unison, I think that's where true value is unlocked for both the brand and the consumers, which means they also give you extra rewards for trying their recommendations, things that they want to kind of implement in the marketplace, and they reward you for doing that. And perhaps the part that I love most about this program is that it has the ability to customize user benefits basis specific usage behavior across different touch points, from physical stores to digital touch points, from directly interacting with Starbucks to some of their partners. And they have the ability to customize your member benefits right down to an individual level, which is, again, amazing. Something which they call dynamic offer optimization, which is just a fancy way of saying that their offers evolve with the consumer's usage and the needs of their program, which I think is again industry benchmark, and definitely the results also kind of show why it seems to be resonating with their consumers. Okay, another example of this online to offline, offline to online unlock is an example close to home, which is this feature called Sneakers Pass on with Nike, which is available on the Sneakers app. So anyone who's familiar with the Sneakers app and who's familiar with sneaker culture in general knows how deep the love for some of these high heat sneakers is, and consumers tend to line up for hours, sometimes days, in order to get the sneakers that they truly want. So what this Sneakers Pass does, it's a pretty amazing unlock, is the fact that, hey, if you get this Sneakers Pass, which can be given to you digitally via the Sneakers app. So if you have the Sneakers app and you qualify for it, it gives you the ability to walk into that specific store and be able to get that pair of sneakers that you truly want before anyone else, which truly results in that member value that gets generated by giving them access to the benefit that they most crave. So again, an example of online and offline working together, and how you can drive demand from an online platform back into even a store, and let consumers kind of access product at the end of it. Okay, so now that we've done with that one, dovetailing from the previous unlock where we talked about the importance of building seamless journeys across platforms, this is another interesting one. Increasingly, brands are recognizing the role and importance of direct channels in achieving greater impact to serve consumer needs more personally. If you remember, that's what I called out my job is right now, and circumventing some of the uncertainty with platforms and capabilities that you can't directly control. And essentially what that breaks down to is leveraging indirect channels essentially as traffic drivers to drive traffic back to your direct channels, where you are now seeing on those direct channels a greater investment in tools and capabilities to elevate consumer experience on your own platforms. And let me break it down a little bit this point in terms of the first step that I believe in doing that is to build just this right balance of art and science, to have those robust sort of data and insight systems that help you accurately understand user behavior, that can help you get, that can help relevant teams make data-informed decision in mapping consumer journeys, but also creating internal systems and processes between brand and business teams to get more comfortable with adopting data. And also vice versa, I would say, with the insights and engineering teams understanding the brand and business priorities. And I think if those two work together, that can go a long way in having that art and science kind of work together. The second one is a very interesting point to unpack. So as a brand, if you offer benefits to your consumers, not all benefits are created equal. So as Nike, for example, you offer access to running and training programs on your NRC or NTC app. You offer free shipping or returns on some of the products. And you also offer access to product before the rest of the marketplace in certain cases. But not all of those benefits are essentially created equal. Some benefits resonate a lot more than the other benefits do for most consumers. And I think what most brands suffer from is the fact that the consumers that come to you in search of that most coveted benefit, more often than not, believe it or not, they churn is because there are too many clicks before they can experience that primary benefit, that aha benefit that they are coming to you for. And as a custodian of the brand, you got to make sure that you can eliminate some of those barriers so that your primary benefit delivery, whether it's product or content or experiences, comes with the least amount of friction and probably the earliest in terms of the consumer journey. And then the last point that I want to make is something that we're all kind of becoming more and more aware of, is the fact that consumers want brands to be able to serve their needs more personally. They want them to be able to know them better and to be able to serve them more personally. And I think the direct channels and the capabilities that I talked about give you the option to unlock that personalization at scale. Whether it's a simple birthday email that you receive a special sort of promo or product access on, or whether it's an unlock to something that is based on your past purchases and truly special and unique for you. All of these go a long way in building that longer term consumer value. Some of the examples that I really like, and probably one of the brands that does this really well, is Spotify. A lot of their UI features on their app make new user experience fully customized. And if every user's home screen is different from another user's home screen and personalized at every relevant touch points. I know I love my daily mix playlists or artist recommendations that let me explore new music or podcasts based on my interests. Plus, the fact that I can cast to any device in my home is such a big unlock for me. Even some of the things that they do, like the year-wrapped summary of your listening history, becomes almost socially shareable content. By the way, that's not my snapshot. My music choices are all over the place. I just found that on the internet. But I think overall, in terms of customizing the UI features and just creating that personalized experience on their platforms, I think Spotify does an incredible job. And again, another great example of personalization at scale closer to home is Nike's sneaker customization feature called Nike by You, that is exclusively available only on Nike app and .com to Nike members. So essentially what that benefit means is that you can customize your own sneaker and personalize it with the choice of material. Sometimes you can engrave certain text on it to truly make a one of a kind. And then I think to provide this benefit, you need backend and front end capabilities from not just UI tech, but also supply chain innovations. And I think this feature continues to be one of the industry benchmarks and one of the more popular benefits within the Nike portfolio. Okay, so this is the last one, and the final unlock that I truly want to talk about. And I feel I've saved the best for last, because you can even call it the toughest one to crack and often overlooked by most brands, which is the ability for brands to foster community engagement. Let's assume you've done everything right so far as a brand and created this loyal base of consumers. What you are focused on is how and where you communicate with them. That's all you're focused on. That's where most of your media dollars, if you may, are spent. Wherein there isn't any place for your consumers to connect and interact with one another, which is, I think, a big aha moment, because not only does that, and I'll tell you why I think I want to stress on this a little bit more, because if it is always that one-sided communication where you as a brand are communicating with your consumers, but they don't have the ability to interact with one another, not only does that stagnate the growth of the community, but also the culture that they represent. Because without the community engagement and interaction, new ideas cannot germinate, new heroes cannot emerge. And as brands, our role is to act as facilitators for the community, because a healthy and engaged community will drive the culture forward. And I think first step in that direction is to create the right forums and platforms for honest and organic member interaction and engagement. And a great example of that is the rise of platforms like Discord and Telegram, which enable and embrace communal communication styles. I think additionally, what you also have to do as a brand is consistently find ways to recognize and reward active members of that community, those change makers and opinion drivers that you can enable and empower to take the collective forward. Give them a platform and shine a light on them. As long as their values align with yours, they will unlock new possibilities that even you could not think of or were never able to. And the last part connected to that is, how do you tap into the voice of the community to co-create the future of your brand? Which means not only taking active feedback, but actually involving the community members in building future iterations of your product or your service. And I think if they have that level of co-ownership with your brand, their love for your brand and their connection with your brand will only go that much further. So I think it's an important unlock to think of as well. And some interesting examples here, perhaps some of the best examples recently that I've come across in terms of fostering community engagement are in very interesting and unique places, and across some of the brands actually operating in the metaverse. Whether it is blue chip NFT projects like Artifact Studios, who Nike recently acquired, or gaming partners like Fortnite or Roblox, some of the most disruptive community engagement best practices are coming from this space. Even if you think not just NFTs, but like gaming in general, long before NFTs became a thing, gaming brands have been doing this really, really well for years now. That's why if you think about the gaming platforms that are becoming more and more popular, are platforms like Minecraft or Roblox or Fortnite, where community created gameplay is becoming more and more popular. And I truly believe that these brands are leading the way in terms of unlocking the power of communal engagement, whether it is creation of actual creation of actual elements within, or even like experiences that you can unlock, or like forum for dialogue across, like I said, Discord or even internal gaming forums. Everything is done through the power of collective. And it's a full circle moment for me, because over the last few months of actively studying this fast evolving Web3 and metaverse spaces, I feel like that rookie that's fresh out of college all over again, not knowing what the future holds for marketeers, but knowing still that if you have those fundamentals locked in, and hopefully some of what I talked about in this session so far, you should be able to pivot and evolve and even thrive and make the most of these changing times. So in the end, I'm just going to leave you with this quote. And I want to thank you for listening in and hope you found some of this useful. This quote is one of my favorite quotes, is from Bill Bauman, who we fondly call the coach here at Nike. And he says the real purpose of running isn't to win a race, it is to test the limits of the human heart. Which I think is incredibly profound and so true for the times that we live in right now. And especially as brands and marketeers, I feel like despite constant change and everything around us, if our intentions are pure and we want to improve the lives of our consumers, and we have a resilient spirit, we will definitely thrive and prevail in the long run. And with that, I want to say thank you for listening in, and hopefully you found that useful.
Thank you, Mr. Pandit, for sparing your valuable time and sharing very informative content with us today. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the ET Brand Equity Digi Plus Conclave. Stay tuned for the ET Brand Equity India Digi Plus Awards.